Normally here on Test Drive, you see both of us the minute it starts. This is obviously different. So different, I wore a different shirt because we weren't able to actually get on the schedule together and both be in this car in the same week that it arrived. We felt that it was important enough to do this 2022 Acura MDX, even if we couldn't shoot it together.
You're watching Everyday Driver. We make a TV show, podcast,
and YouTube channels dedicated to great cars, driving adventures, and helping you find a car you'll love.
Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss a thing.
We love the MDX. It's been around quite a while. This is the 4th generation. We love how the last one drove and the spaciousness, the usefulness. And every time we get in an SUV, especially with as crowded as the market is, we're always looking for something for you. You're asking, is there driving fun to be had in any SUV whatsoever?
The thing I still love about this MDX is its scale. Now, this is not a big 7-seater. This is on the small end of 7-seaters, things that really are more like a 5-seater. Kind of like the Mazda CX-9. And actually the Mazda CX-9 is relevant here because it's the other one I can think of that is a 7-seater that feels more like a driver's car.
For the 2022 Acura MDX, everything is on sport. Sport, 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 everything is in sport. It is brand new. The entire chassis, suspension, everything about this has been re-engineered except for the engine. But this is really, truly all new. The difference is, this is on Acura's light truck platform. That was concerning to me when I read that, because I thought, uh-oh, is the magic gone? Is that MDX good to drive thing kind of missing? Well, there's a lot of trade-offs. Let's put it that way.
It's interesting to be in this 2022 MDX after we were in the TLX. You can see that Acura is taking its entire lineup and moving it along to be in that styling style. That TLX is their flagship sedan. They consider this MDX their flagship of the lineup.
The front is very vertical and blunt. What I do like is that diamond-shaped grille that has now defined Acura. Everything pulls off the shape of that grille. Looking closely at the exterior, there's too much front overhang. Oddly, if you look at this from a direct side view, the hood and front wheels look like a different car than the A-pillar back, the base of the A-pillar all the way to the back of the car. Pull your eyes all the way along the shoulder, all the way to the back. I like the shape of the taillights. I like the overall proportions of this.
So here I am in a big 7-seater, and I'm discovering again, well, it's not overly roomy, but I do fit. I actually have a surprising amount of headroom in this car. Good driver position, good space for me all around. I actually like being here. I enjoyed the seats in the TLX. They just weren't in a car with enough space for my body. Here I have good seats and enough space. Now, the sacrifice is the second row is good, not great. The third row is tiny. It's not enough space back there. Also, when you have the third seat up, the storage back there is not great.
I'm trying to figure out, as big as this is, where'd all the space go? Now, look at the instrument panel. On the passenger side, there's 4 different materials in the breadth of your hand. There's a lot of visual interest here, and I like that it's very TLX in its execution. It's seemingly very driver-focused. And I like that when I'm sitting here, it does not feel like an SUV. The only way it tells me that it's an SUV is my heels are dropped farther down just because of the seating position. But otherwise, this looks like a sedan. It looks like a sports sedan.
What I find interesting is to actually look at this MDX with the prior version, which at the time didn't feel dated, but you look at the difference in interior now and it is profound. The old one actually still had gauges. Now we actually have a digital gauge cluster here.
There's a lot of information. It's entertaining. It's good to look at visually, and it's clear from an information hierarchy standpoint. There's a lot of clarity here. In sport mode, the track is across the top. All right, I like how this looks. It's very easy to get used to this cabin quickly.
It has gone from a 2-screen center console to a single widescreen here with 2 different panels. Now that's an idea that we've seen other places, Lexus, etc. The interesting thing here is the interface style. That looks like a touchscreen, and yet it is not a touchscreen.
You use this touchpad down here that is claiming to be perfectly mapped to the screen. And it actually is. This has a lot to teach Lexus. It's pretty easy to do, and you've got a palm rest that actually is cantilevered out over your Qi charger, so your phone sort of sticks underneath the Qi charger here. When you're deep into the menu, no, it is not perfectly mapped to it, because these 3 comfort, normal, and sport selections can be chosen all the way up here at the top of the map of the touchpad and all the way at the bottom. To go back, you can't touch the screen. You have to hit the back button. It's only on the main menus that this is perfectly mapped.
I love the concept. The problem here is twofold. One, this interface you have down here with your finger, it's surprisingly slow, especially with Apple CarPlay. While it will do Apple CarPlay, it'll do all the things you want it to do. When you change features, sometimes it just thinks. It pauses and takes a minute and checks its coffee and comes back and asks what it was you needed again, and maybe you need to hit it a little further, and then it engages. So it's a bit slow, it's a bit ponderous. Once it starts working in the format that you want, like Apple CarPlay, for example, or navigation, once you get to that screen, it actually is very responsive, but shifting over to different parts of its brain takes a minute. The other issue with the touch screen that isn't a touch screen, as a driver, I think you're going to settle in, you're going to like it a lot. Using this touch pad down here to control the screen, it might take a minute to think about it, but it does start to make sense. It's very ergonomic. The problem is everyone but the driver. If you're a passenger in a car with a screen like this, you're not going to reach over and use a touchpad. You're going to touch the screen. Invariably, you're going to touch the screen. We're used to, at this point, touching screens, and if you're a passenger in a car, you just dive for the screen, don't you? It doesn't work that way. Now, what are they going to do? Are they going to reach over to try to get at the right angle from the driver and try to use the touchpad? Are they going to tell you to do it? What's going to happen there? I think this is going to annoy everyone but the driver. The driver is going to have to control themselves and remember there was a world before touchscreens and use this touchpad and settle into the fact that sometimes it's not as fast as you'd like.
Heat controls. You've got these little silver tongues sticking out here. It's very easy to understand. The fan speed, you had to actually kind of dive down in here and really pay attention. You have to read everything on these buttons. I do like the materials everywhere. I like the honesty. Everything that looks like it would feel a certain way feels that way. The paddles feel a little bit cold to me. The leather feels warm.
This is a fantastic update here, and it just looks nice. The mix of materials, the red, the piano black, the almost carbon fiber metal accents here, the leather, it all feels very high-end. I'm not a fan of piano black. I know it's not really going away. I wish this had less because it's already incredibly fingerprinted in a car with 2,000 miles that we've only had a week. Great big panoramic roof here. I really like sitting here. This steering wheel is reminiscent of Acura sports cars. It suggests, hey, we make the NSX, which the last version did as well. This has wonderful paddles that actually feel like something out of a sports car. Of course, now it's controlling a 10-speed automatic, which is surreal.
The same 3.5-liter V6, now re-engineered to accept a 10-speed automatic transmission.
The last generation MDX that we drove, it had a 9-speed transmission married to this V6. This one has a 10-speed, just like the current TLX. Again, all aligning with the new thinking of the styling and the power and the lineup that goes with the new Acura TLX.
I still don't know why we're at 10 speeds. I really don't get it, especially because this has 4-gear drop. You can switch 4 gears just to get that passing power, which is great, but I still don't get it. 10, I don't understand. Nevertheless, that's where we're at. It's got 290 horsepower, 267 pound-feet of torque.
This is not an incredible powerhouse. However, this is a smaller SUV. And with these 10 speeds, it mines all of the power that's available. You can actually work these paddles, which feel like something right out of a sports sedan, a really good sports sedan, and you can pull all that power out to make this thing hustle.
The power is decent, but it's not going to blow you away. It moves the vehicle, let's put it that way. But why are we still at 290? Why are we not a standout in this class? Flat to the floor. And 5,000 RPM. And I'm bored. Come on, where's the power? Plus the engine sound is thrashier than the amount of power coming out of it. So it sounds like it's working harder and you should be going faster than you actually are.
You have an engine note that actually sounds better than a 4-cylinder because it's a V6. Not bad. Not really sure why I have 10 gears. Well, I have 10 gears so I can get gas mileage. But yeah, that was well above freeway speeds, and I'm still going. I'm still pulling paddles. There's 10th. That was a lot of gear changing and not really any speed gaining, because of course that helps you with your gas mileage, which isn't stellar. It is still a big V6 in here, but it's satisfying to have a V6 though.
Acura claims 25 on the highway, which is good, but For the most part, an average of 21. If I'm going to get mediocre fuel mileage, I better get awesome power as a trade-off. Don't give me Middlin power with Middlin fuel economy. That leaves me cold. No. Here we have somewhat of a sport SUV. And there are SUVs on the market, some costing twice or more than this one does, that actually handle well and are actually really fun to drive and engage with. But this, again, is built on a light truck platform, which I think is its downfall. From the very beginning, you have to choose, is this going to be more truck-like and more useful? Because if it is, it needs to be even bigger and carry the third row. The passengers back there, it needs to be better on those passengers. Or is it a sport SUV? Is it focused on the driving experience? Because the instrument panel tells me this is very focused on the driving experience. And also because of the rigidity and the way the entire chassis takes the loads from the rear suspension, it tells me that it's better distributed than ever before and therefore should be able to take corners.
You gotta have those trade-offs. There's a lot of scales being balanced when you buy a 7-seater. Do you need space? Do you need hauling and towing capacity? Do you want driver enjoyment? These are things you can't all have together. Unless you want to spend an inordinate amount of money and get something like the big AMG Germans or something like that, it's really hard to have driving enjoyment and a lot of power and a lot of hauling space and a lot of towing capacity. Generally, things have to ebb and flow a bit, and that's true here. This trades driver enjoyment and sacrifices sheer scale. Now, we have to put that in perspective. This isn't an overly enjoyable, fun car to drive because that's not this market segment. You're not buying a 7-seat SUV for great driving experience.
I understand that when you build a 7-passenger SUV, the focus has to be on space and passengers and comfort. That is paramount. That is why people buy SUVs. I understand that. But sport mode, you're telling me there's a sport mode here. You've put paddles on the steering wheel. You're giving me materials and a flat bottom steering wheel that say something is going to be engaging, and it seems like it's all missing. I don't know where it went. I think it's the platform. Maybe my headspace is wrong, but if you're gonna put sport mode with paddles on an SUV, and tell me, especially coming from Acura, the people that know what they're doing, tell me this is a sporty SUV to drive. I do feel the rigidity of the entire body structure being better than ever before. Because of that, it drives smaller. Because this is so well built and so stiff, it gets smaller.
The trade-offs for it not being an enormous 7-seater is the fact that it doesn't feel very big. This feels very similar to something like a Porsche Cayenne, which, if you don't remember, is actually only a 5-seater. It definitely feels smaller than the Audi Q7, for example, which is the 7-seat version of that platform. But it has the agility, it has the small package feel of a Porsche Cayenne, and I do mean that as high praise. But if you compare this to the agile Germans, the performance SUVs that happen to have 5 or 7 seats, now this starts to feel like a bargain. I think it really depends entirely on which direction you look at it. It's not quite as good. It isn't as dynamically solid, but it's close. It's easy to go quite fast in this. The ride's pretty good, and it just feels competent. It doesn't ever feel sloppy or large, which is a problem that plagues SUVs.
But every corner I turn in, I'm wondering, where's the fun? I remember the 3rd generation, I'm liking it better, to be honest. In sport mode, I still feel like it's far too soft. It's dead through the steering wheel. I'm kind of bummed because I had high hopes for this, thinking the next MDX, it'll be even better. But they switched platforms.
Like everything in the Acura lineup, this comes with super duper handling all-wheel drive. The duper's actually an additive, but you'd think that that's the case here because you can actually scroll. I love this. It reminds me so much of the old Mitsubishi Evos. You can scroll and you can see what wheel's getting sent what power now. And if you put your foot in it in the middle of a corner, don't look, actually, I'll look for you. When you do that, you can actually see the side that needs extra power being given extra power to help tuck the SUV around the corner. Now that's true in their cars as well.
That super handling all-wheel drive is very cool. It's not a marketing gimmick. It can throw up to 70% of torque to the rear and 100% side to side, and so therefore it tries to overcome any understeer and get to the correct line.
See, I love looking down. I shouldn't, but I love looking down and seeing, oh, well, that wheel's getting a little bit more power than I expected in that corner. The problem is you don't end up looking up enough, which is what leads to the crashing. I don't think you can come to the 7-seat SUV market and expect handling prowess. I don't think you can even come and expect handling information. And guess what? This is not a standout there. There isn't any kind of real information from this steering rack. It changes up a tiny bit when you change it from Eco to Normal to Sport. The main thing that surprises me, though, is how agile it is.
But there's no feedback. There's no sensitivity, anything going on through the steering wheel. Am I in Sport? That was a Normal. The suspension just doesn't get stiff enough. So when you throw it in, the entire car leans way too much, and you're relying on the torque vectoring to get you through the corner rather than you steering. That initial turn in is, well, there's a little bit there. Again, maybe my expectations are too much.
I think this is more agile than the typical family needs. If you take this down a curvy back road, I think you're going to be genuinely shocked at how well it drives. It corners very well. There's a little bit more body roll than you would expect in something small because this isn't small. But in the world of SUVs, if you actually had 4 more people behind you, 5 is really pushing it, you would actually surprise all of them with how fast you're going. Somebody in your party is going to go, "Can you slow down a bit?" Probably from the cave-like back seat where they can't really see what's going on. They just feel it like some astronaut in some sort of test chamber.
I'm left wanting anything to tell me that this is sporty. All I'm getting is just comfort. I want more feedback. I want any feedback to the steering wheel. I'm getting absolutely nothing through the wheel. When you're cruising around and you're just on a long distance trip and you're running errands, none of that matters. It needs to be a comfortable, beautiful, awesome place to be. But if you're giving me a sport knob and paddles, it cannot feel this distant. It cannot. And I think going to a truck chassis just to make it bigger took away the sport.
In spite of the fact that this updated MDX is bigger in every dimension, it still feels smaller than most of the big 7-seaters. It does feel smaller than the Telluride or the Palisade or the Highlander. All of those feel larger than this. In this updated Acura MDX, I'm impressed with how small it feels without feeling cramped. If you need a lot of towing or hauling, or you have to have 7 usable seats, you need to shop elsewhere. This isn't big enough.
But I don't understand why it feels like it's being held back. The price is $62,000. Okay, fine, that's competitive-ish, except when I bring up the Kia Telluride, which actually does have good 7-passenger space, especially in the 3rd row for tall guys like us. And I think, well, that was fun to drive. I really enjoyed how it drove, and it had a great space and great looks, and the proportions were right on, and I love everything about it. I gotta be honest, I'm coming away pretty disappointed. I thought there would be more to this. 8s in every category. Solid 8s. But I want a 9. I'm looking for my 9. I'm looking for a 10 in any category, but is there a 9?
This is not a market segment where you buy it first and foremost for its driving dynamics or its quality of interaction for the driver. That's not why you buy a 7-seater. I understand that. What I like is when I'm surprised by, this is surprisingly good to drive. This is kind of fun. The pedals listen. The engine kind of howls. I can throw it around down a back road, really lean into the corners, because it does lean, and enjoy myself and feel like, I took that faster than I expected. This does pretty well. You want to be surprised by the car that you drive. You want to feel like I spent my money well. And if you're a person who is a driver and you're looking at the agile, athletic Germans and you're thinking, I don't know if I can afford that. I don't know if I want to afford that. You look at the MDX.